we have the pleasure today to invite Karan to join us. Hello, Karan.
Hi, guys.
Right, so Karan will be talking with us about what he is doing on his OPT, and also the connection between his Drew work and his work currently professionally. And then, so without further ado, let's start with Karan. Let's talk about your little bio. Give us, who you are, why you came to Drew, and what you majored, at Drew, and then what you're doing currently at your job.
Sure. So I'm Karan Erry. I came from India. I'm an international, well, I was an international student. So I graduated Drew in 2019. Arguably a good time to graduate, a year before the crisis. So I majored in computer science with a minor in business. And following Drew, I got an internship at a mobility startup in San Francisco, which converted to full-time in December of 2019. And I work with Ridecell here in San Francisco. Is there anything else?
Yeah, that's very good. And I totally agree with you. I think, definitely a reasonably good time to graduate in 2019, right? So I guess, my first question to you is, from my interaction with you, you're very, good with tech, you're very good with what you do, and then you're very keen and interested in the field, right? Can you tell us about what got you interested in the field, and then like when you started to know, oh, I want to go toward that for my career?
Appreciate your endorsements, Max. It had to be back in I think the in high school, the early years of high school, that I started to get interested in this stuff. I remember we had a class where we were learning like basic HTML stuff for web pages, and I was soon getting into the advanced, not advanced, but like the second steps of computer science, like understanding how to work with programs, and that's what really sparked my interest. Like I found I could, with a few taps on the keyboard, I could pretty much do anything I wanted the program to do, and it would just do it. So it sort of like escalated throughout high school, and I took computer science in the IB. I came to Drew, and I actually didn't take a lot of computer science courses initially. I mean, I was sure I was headed towards a computer science major, but I also explored like philosophy and business in my first few semesters at Drew. And I think that also gave me a really good grounding in theoretical computer science, because a lot of where computer science can be headed with artificial intelligence and everything is grounded in what computer science really is, and where computer science and artificial intelligence and robotics fits in to like the human psyche, which is very similar to what psychology and epistemology deal with. So I think those gave me a good grounding in understanding where computer science fits into our lives. That's what led me down the path. And so it's, if there's any computer science students listening to this, I would highly recommend just taking a course in like epistemology and like just understanding what it means to be. And it sounds really abstract, but you'll if you start to study artificial intelligence, you'll start to actually like ponder those questions more seriously. That led to me doing a research thesis with Professor Emily Hill, it was based in the expansion of abbreviations and domain terms in code, which can pose a problem to programmers unfamiliar with a piece of code who don't know exactly what they mean. And I published an honors thesis based on that. Here I am. I work at Ridecell. I do backend engineering, so I work on the server side in Python and Django, Python and Django languages, and pretty much work on like database stuff, API creation, and other server side tasks.
Right. So actually, since you opened the box of computer science, I'm gonna tried to dig into it, even though my background is not in that field, but I'm generally interested in
Sure,
tech,
anything.
right? So you talked about, the etymology classes and all the deep understanding of what AI is, what computer science is, right? And so you've got those, bunch of courses or like knowledge, right? And you also have the languages, right? So basically whatever you do for coding, and then you also, do your tasks and work at your job. So if you link all of them, what would you, now that you've got a professional experience, right? What would you tell the students who are thinking of going into computer science? Why are they taking what classes, and then
Ah,
and then what helps them eventually, at work, and what does work look like as a backend,
sure.
engineer?
Sure. So can I assume I'm talking to computer science students here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that's a great question, Max. That's actually something that struck me as I enter the workforce, and has actually, like, I've continued to go back to that over the last few months. Because throughout college, you're wondering, and there's the old joke that none of this is actually going to count in real life, and it's all old stuff. But so I'll start with saying, well, I'll start with a really broad and old adage that I mean, everything helps at some point in life. But honestly, so the foundations of computer science can seem odd, and can seem, I'd say, can seem extraneous a lot to people who actually want to practice in computer science. And so if you see like regular coding jobs, and if you see honestly just basic like coding stuff, like if you like open a GitHub account and start to upload some code, and create a couple of repositories, create maybe a few web pages, maybe like a server and an app, you may feel that learning those foundations that you learned in Joule, like operating systems, networks, and security, and all those classes might not necessarily be central to coding jobs. And that's both correct and wrong. So on some level, a lot of jobs out there are available to those who don't even have bachelor's degrees in computer science. But the catch is that, and this is not actually said so on the face of it, is that a lot of the deep knowledge you would want to have to carry out those tasks like really well is rooted in a broad understanding of the fundamental ways in which computers work. And so, for example, when I'm working as a backend engineer, it helps me to know that deep down there's an assembly level language that works in a certain way. And even like just, I mean, understanding it by like reading Wikipedia or something is not enough. Like, it helps that I had to work through actual assembly level language problems in Dr. Cass's class that shows me exactly the ways in which those instructions are converted into a low level language. And the way this helps is that when someone talks about an efficiency, if Python has an efficiency factor compared to like other languages because it's written in C, I know that this means that C converts its instructions natively to like assembly level language because I've actually worked in that stuff. And so on the face of it, you may not necessarily like need all those extra things you will learn in foundation classes at Drew. You will want those things to perform some of the deeper and actually more technical tasks as part of those jobs that aren't necessarily advertised. And I know this, I also know I have experienced some of my friends at companies who've laid off people. We in fact laid off people. I can get to that later. Companies tend to prefer those who have degrees because of the fact that when it comes down to like the crunch line, when push comes to shove, those with a foundational understanding in computer science will know better what to prioritize in a computer program as opposed to someone who just has like a practitioner's knowledge. Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic, and I think you just hit home to one of my biggest questions, which is there are so many online degrees for computer science, or like not even degrees, right? Online packages that you can get from Udemy, get from anywhere to teach you how to code, right? And then so I was assuming, oh, okay, if I learn how to code very well, then I can get, those jobs. But, I thank you for telling us how beneficial it is to get the deep down understanding of what computer science is and what's laying underneath the languages, right? And then I think
Sure.
from hearing from you, our students who are thinking of majoring in computer science at Drew would really appreciate what they're having, right?
For sure.
For education. So that's really good. Now let's switch gears a little bit, and then let's talk about. So you talked about your computer science journey, right? Let's switch gears and then talk about your job hunting journey. I
Sure.
was with you for a little bit, in your senior year, seeing you, trying to figure out what to do, right? How to get jobs and everything. And then eventually you did it, right? Right before graduation, you landed, this opportunity. So tell us about, all the challenges that you had, all the confusions in the beginning, how you cracked them one by one, and at the end, you came to the finish line.
Sure. So yeah, I think this is really a multi-pronged process, and it's not easy for anyone. I guess it's marginally easier if you come from like Harvard University or something, but anything below that, it's hard for anyone. And it's odd actually, because I was reading an article recently which talked about the severe shortage of computer programmers there are in America. And apparently there's as of I think this year, there's like 500,000 computer science jobs that are unfilled. And so there's an I forget the word for it. Basically, there's a mismatch in the supply and demand, clearly, because there's companies out there who want them, but there is the supply out there, but somehow the process becomes hard for graduating computer scientists. So I would say, so certainly the resources that I used at Drew helped a lot. So Max, I remember you were helpful. You put me in touch with some of your friends to reach out to. I remember talking to my professors in computer science who put me in touch with colleagues who potentially had jobs in the area for Drew students, and even non for Drew students, like just jobs accepting applicants. And I also remember the Career Center helped to some extent. So back when I was at Drew, we didn't have the new launch program that I believe is is going this year,
Mm-hmm.
or was it last year? I'm not sure. But so I think Launch is starting a new alumni, a more enhanced, I think, alumni network for job seekers, and I think that'll be fantastic. But even in my day, the Career Center put me in touch with I forget the name of it, but there's this network where some Drew alums who were practicing in computer science I was able to get in touch with and speak to them, not necessarily about getting a job or applying for a job, but even just like industry tips that really helped me sort of spruce up my resume, figure out what to write in cover letters, and just what skills to show and what skills to maybe put on the back burner. So really, it's a multi-pronged approach. You just have to do it a lot. We have this running joke with a friend of ours who we think he's slightly lazy, but we have this running joke where every time we pick up the phone to chat, we'll be like, "Hey, have you applied to jobs yet?" And you just have to put in the applications. I remember I actually had a spreadsheet of all of these like 200 companies that every day I would tick more and more, saying I've applied. These people have responded. I tried cold calling these people. They responded with a yes, no. I wasn't able to get through, and sort of, color-coded spreadsheet showing me where the progress was. The cold calling is the most annoying part. Submitting applications is boring but easy. You can just go to like either LinkedIn or the applications website and submit an application. But what really counts is cold calling. The recruiters cold calling senior people in the company, even if they don't respond. I've heard, although this is just guesswork on this end, but if they don't respond, I've heard that even like if they just see your thing, then they might mention it in a verbal exchange to one of their recruiters or something. What helped for me in the end is if you have the resources available to you, it might actually help to go to a location where you're hoping to like find jobs. For me, it was San Francisco, which has a hot startup scene. So I actually went to San Francisco in spring break, and I had the fortunate ability to stay with an uncle of mine, and I cold called a bunch of startups in the area. Just like honestly, I think it was like 20 or 30 people, and I managed to actually meet with 2 people and a freelancer whom I had gotten in touch with, I think, at one of either the Tillman House meet and greets or something like that over my years in college. And one of that actually led to the job. So I met this recruiter from Ridecell after I think cold calling them a couple of times, and I met for a few minutes. I remember I was having come from New Jersey. I was in a suit and I had my jacket in my hand and shoes, and I walk in. And he's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm here for the talk we set up." And he was like, "All right, can I be frank with you? You cannot dress like this. This is California. If you dress like this, people will think you've overdressed, and they will like deny you jobs immediately. Like you have to." And I saw him, and I was really shocked. Like he was in a t-shirt and jeans and shoes at the company's headquarters. So it's an interesting scene. But so exactly, that's another thing. Dress for your job. And certainly don't feel ashamed of just wearing like really casual clothes in the casual West. Some of my colleagues actually wear shorts to work, but I wouldn't advise that for you yet. But yes, take advantage of your resources at Drew, the Career Center, your professors in computer science, certainly the international office. Take advantage of reaching out to Drew alums. They're the most likely to like want to help. And even if they can't get you jobs, as I said, they can give you significant tips about putting yourself out there. And just apply, cold call, and try to actually go somewhere so you can set up meetings with them. Like they really appreciate like setting up a meeting. And honestly, it's always fun for someone to talk for 20 minutes to like a guy right out of college, because it's sort of the least stressful meeting in one's day, because you don't like there's no bars for what you can say. You're the one in the high chair. So I mean, people love meeting with college kids just graduating to give tips or anything, and everyone loves being heard. So that's
fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I was taking down notes, a lot of good notes. So before I ask you to expand on some of them, can you explain to people who don't know what cold call means?
Sure. So cold calling is a term for basically reaching out to people when you're so the phrase in English, I believe, where it started with is when the relationship is cold or essentially like non-existent. And so cold calling is basically you reach out to people just to establish a relationship. And out here, it's a relationship to show your interest in a job. And so when I was applying last year, I would look up, and it's a lot of grunt work, because companies don't like to display publicly like the email addresses or like contact info of their employees to prevent, I think, spam email. So you have to figure out. I would go and look up sort of, maybe the VP of Human Resources, or I would go on LinkedIn and sort of search for like a recruiter for say some companies have a position that says new grad recruiter, or college recruiting like director or something. And those are the real recruiters who will probably, if not directly see your resume, they will be like overseeing a team of recruiters who will be reviewing your resume. And those are the ones you want to reach out to. You could even take your shot and reach out to like a VP of Human Resources, who again will be overseeing like many levels of recruiting, one of which will see your resume. And so just find their email addresses, find them on LinkedIn, ask to connect on LinkedIn, and in your connect message say, I'm a new grad seeking a job at X and X company, and would appreciate being in touch with you on LinkedIn. if you find their email, that's a great catch. Emails are really hard to find. I actually went to the extent of trying different name combinations on the company email head, and I didn't get very far with that. But you can try your luck at that.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna comment on that. I've been listening to some investor webinars, right? And then so basically like they're getting pitches from a lot of people, and then they're saying, hey, we're not putting any of our emails out, but if you can't find it, just guess. Right, because
Yes.
it's very easy for a lot of the companies, right? I'm like, oh, so that sounds very similar to what you were trying, right? Like the different
Sure.
words and everything. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, go ahead. You wanted to say something else?
No, I was just rounding it off. I was saying, so
Okay.
yeah, try to reach out to people. You 75 or 80% of the time you won't get responses. You just have to cross your fingers and hope that they actually pass on your message. And yeah, just try everything.
That's great. That's great. And then so then just to clarify to people who are listening, when we say cold call, it doesn't mean that you pick up the phone and you call. Right? Cold call basically means that the relationship is not there yet, so there's no one to connect you with the recruiter or with the employer, right? But you still connect them with any tool that you can find.
Pretty much, yes, exactly. So yeah, and the term was founded I'm sure like 30 or 40 years ago, when the only form of communication was picking up the phone and calling. So if you find a number, sure, go ahead. Try to call. That I don't know. I actually never tried actually picking up the phone and calling. That's a great idea. I don't know how that would go down. But yes, cold calling means reaching out in any way you can to
Right.
someone with whom you don't have a relationship but would like to establish one.
That's great. That's great. Yes. And then I think you were referring to a platform at Drew. You said connected you with alumni. Was it Drew Connect by any chance? Do you remember?
I forget, Max. If you can shoot me some names. I remember Drew Connect, and I wasn't sure if that was it. I also remember using Handshake.
Yeah.
Um,
Drew Link.
but I can't remember the exact one on which I was able to connect with alumni. So I also was able to get in touch with alumni through Dr. Hill. I remember reaching out to one of our alums at Google. And I remember I did reach out to at least one alum on a platform, and I forget which one it was.
Got it. But like you said, you need to take multiple directions, right? And then try to get connections anywhere you can. That's really good. And then thanks for letting me know that the Tillman meet and greet helped. Very happy to hear that. So we'll continue to do that.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah, they were really helpful. Like, I think a couple of them I went to over the years.
Yeah. And then we love having you there because you always ask questions. I think that also says something. When you're at these type of meet and greet and network sessions, one thing you can do is just go there and then that's it, right? But or you can be very active in there,
right?
Then it's going to be completely different result, right?
Oh yeah, big difference. Yeah, and especially if you're trying to establish a relationship with the person speaking or the panel out there, it shows a lot when you actually interact, because it shows them you're listening. It shows them that you're able to come up with like questions and process the information on the spot. It shows a lot of things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Especially, in fact, I wanted to point out, I especially used to like those panel discussions with, I think, not the mayor of Madison, but Jim.
Jim from Madison, yes.
Yeah, Jim from Madison. Yeah, I was fond of him.
Yeah, he has been a tremendous, one of our best mentors for our students. He's basically those people who are really the givers, right? So like you have the givers,
yeah,
and the givers, and he is absolutely like the best, giver out there who is just really generous to our students, right? If you want to talk with him, get some, coffee time with him, 100%. But I also think, you did something really good that and then you said it yourself before, you're connecting with the alum, with all the mentors, not necessarily, for asking for jobs. You're connecting them so that you're in that, you're getting into the space, right? And then you're using them really as alumni, as mentors, instead of, hey, do you have a job for me, right? Because
Yeah.
that's completely right. Then, if you're asking for jobs, then the break is probably the worst 20 minutes in their day, right? Instead
I'm
of
sorry.
no, I was just joking. If you're like constantly asking for jobs, right? Then when you meet with people, it's gonna be like probably the worst 20 minutes in their day, not the best.
Actually, I'll disagree, Max.
Okay.
Because so one of the things I learned when I was applying to jobs last year is that you should never be afraid to ask, like, directly,
Okay.
does your company have a job for me? Because you'll get a couple of like different responses. One of which will be, we may be hiring. I'll direct you to the hiring team. Which is a great response. It shows you that like the person is not necessarily like miffed with your question, because it's not their responsibility.
Mhm.
A second will be, we're actively hiring and I can interview you right now. I never got that, but that is the hope. Like you hope that you're actually like connecting with someone. I remember Dr. Hill actually, in my last semester at Drew, had this speaker series where alums and other colleagues of hers would come in and just talk to us. And I actually was part of that earlier this year. But I remember walking up to people after the session and just going, "Hi, is so and so company hiring?" And it would seem I mean, my heart would be in my mouth in that moment, because I'd be like, I don't know this person. How can I just walk up and ask for a
Right, right,
job?
right, 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 right.
But I remember one of the hurdles to get over was that people don't care whether you're asking for jobs. If they're hiring, they'll be glad to see an enthusiastic person, because otherwise they're receiving applications from no-name people over the internet. And if they're not hiring, they'll just say a simple no. Like, it's, I mean, from my end of it, on the company side, it's such a simple black and white. If I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you ask me. I have a clear answer for you. I'll either direct you to the recruiting team or I'll say no. But for students, it can be a bit of a hurdle to cross. Like, how can I ask them for a job? Like, what if their company is not hiring? What if they don't like how I look? What if they don't like the fact that I didn't even ask them how they are? So many things just to realize that people don't care about in the end.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's actually really good. Thanks for, clarifying that misconception that I have. This is actually really good that you said, because on the job seekers end, you're always worried about like this and that and this and that, right? But then on the employer side, like you said, it's a yes or no, right? It's a very simple for them. They're not even thinking, right? They don't even need to put any thoughts, right? Just
Exactly. Yeah.
right. So that's actually very good. I'll make sure to put that note on the description of this interview. And also another thing that I would want to point out, like you said, there is enough of a cultural difference even within the U.S., right? So East Coast and West Coast, in terms of dress code. So you gotta know what people do in the area that you're going to find jobs, right? So that's actually really, really helpful. Now, I think, going back to your actual work, can you tell us about what you do as a back engineer? Like, uh, what what does every day look like? Sort of like a normal day, just for people to see like, oh, is the lifestyle, what was the lifestyle? Is it a good fit for me? Things like that.
Sure. So, well, I can give you an overview. Sure. So let me start with we're a white label company. We don't sell our product to consumers. We sell our product to businesses who repackage. Well, we sell our product to businesses who sell it to who sort of like present it to consumers, and so consumers don't know we're supplying it all the way. It's just our clients, like brands, on the apps and the software. Um, And so the reason I started with that is that our direct relationships then are with our clients. And so the two kinds of main work we do are new features for clients, or bug reports that our clients have filed that they would have either seen themselves or gotten support calls in from their consumers. And so for new features, the day-to-day is basically you create a doc. The new feature comes down from the product team. And this is actually an interesting distinction I had to get used to in my first few months, actually, it took me, is that in college, with one team working on a project, you work on everything. You work on design, you work on engineering, you work on like the product side of it. And so in a company, you tend to have those teams like fairly separated out. And not to the point of like not communication, but you separate them out so that there's a separation of concerns, and each team is sort of specifically focused on what they do. And in that, the product team tells the engineering team, hey, this is what we want, this is what we've discussed with our clients, and this is what they're expecting. And then the engineering team decides how best to deliver it based on like engineering concerns like performance, code cleanliness, and just ease of work and things like that. So really a day-to-day for an engineer for working on a new feature is creating a sort of a documentation for how you are going to implement this feature, working with the front-end teams. As a back-end engineer, working with the front-end team, so the apps and maybe our website teams, to make sure that the APIs you create are going to get accepted well by them. Because another feature of working in a company is that teams want to work in parallel. And so for cross-team things, you want to make sure there's an established contract between... Did Max drop out? I guess he did. Okay, or he's still there. Yeah, so when you're working between teams, and when there's like a cross team dependency, you want to make sure there's an established contract so each team knows what they're working on, so there's no confusion. Yeah, you basically work on features that with other colleagues, and work gets divided into like tickets, and we have sprints. So you sort of work on things in like 3-week runs. And when you're working on bug fixes, it's much less structured. You basically get a support ticket that says, hey, this is not working, and then you have to. It's kind of annoying. You have to go into the code, figure out how this piece of code that you've never touched was supposed to work, and why it's not working that way, and sort of what you can do to fix it, and what you can do to prevent this fix from happening in the future. So yeah, that's did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really good and comprehensive. And sorry, I got offline a little bit. Connection was not so great.
No worries.
But that's very good. Now, I just realized that we never talked about what Ridecell does. So can you give us like a very brief, elevator pitch, background, what it is?
Sure. So we're a mobility startup. We are the brains behind a lot of the new mobility and micromobility options popping up in cities around the world. So we provide car sharing and ride sharing. We provide the infrastructure for car sharing and ride sharing services, as well as for managing fleets of vehicles. So Zipcar is an example of a car sharing service. We don't necessarily power Zipcar yet, but we have our own. We power this thing called Gig in San Francisco and Sacramento, and now in Seattle. We used to power a service that recently went offline called Penske Dash in DC and Arlington, and we have a couple of customers in Europe as well with scooters and cars. We're also evolving. We're starting to become a mobility provider for shared fleets. So any fleet of vehicles that the owner of the vehicle fleet desires to be shared between different consumers at different times, our platform is suited for that.
Perfect. Thank you. And then how many people do you have at the startup?
I believe we're about 200 strong.
Okay.
spread out across our team in San Francisco, our team in Pune in India, and then we have a support team in Europe.
Cool. And then when you applied to work at the company, was it about the same, or were they like expanding a lot?
So we've still been hiring aggressively until this pandemic hit. And so most of our employees actually came in 2019. And even after I joined, we hired a couple of product managers. We hired a couple of interns for different engineering tasks. And so until the pandemic hit, we were expanding aggressively.
That's great. Now, let's talk about startup, because a lot of our students have worries about, we're on OPT, we're on work visa, right? Like we need people to sponsor, so we can't get any jobs or internships from a startup. Let's talk about that. What was your sort of experience talking with the company, talking with the hiring team, and then like how understanding are they in terms of you are on OPT, and then you would need them to sponsor and things like that?
Sure. My startup happened to be, and I think a lot of startups these days, in the need for computer science, top computer science talent, and top engineering talent, are aware of the process required to get international students and sort of sponsor them through H-1B. There's at my startup at Ridecell, there's a significant amount of I might be the only F1 student, but I know there's a significant amount of H-1B holders in the entire company, and so they tend to be pretty much aware. As I said, if they want to hire engineering talent, they know that they have to appeal to those on student or work visas. Mm-hmm. And so we actually partner with a law firm that helps you sort of file your applications for your OPT and your H-1Bs. I would actually ask the startup straight upfront what their well actually no, let me retract on that. If they're hiring you, then you can assume they're aware of the OPT process and that they have some understanding of it. And I guess even if they don't, I think you can just work with your DSO and work and like sort of work with them through the process. It's not necessarily their friendliness. I mean, I actually don't know how to speak to whether like startups are friendly or not to it, but I think as long as like they're willing to hire you and work through the paces with your like different applications, you should be all right.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we take away from what you just said is a lot of the startups actually know about the process and then they have done it, right? I think that is very helpful for our students to know, right? And then also, so basically, startups, it's not just like a 7-8 people team, right? Startups can be a very big team already, and they might already have a lot of H-1B holders or OPT people on the team, because they need to, like you said, speak to appeal to international talent, right? And then so I think from listening to you, our students should understand, don't be afraid to talk with startups.
Yeah.
Right. That's great. Now let's save the last 10 minutes to talk about just COVID. When COVID hit, everything changed, right? And then what tell us about the change from the personnel at the office, your working from home experience, right? And then we will go into, in general, what do you think COVID means for tech companies?
Sure. So certainly, COVID has thrown a wrench in the plans of many tech companies, like what they wanted to do, their hiring plans. I remember I think the CEO of Alibaba in China recently said, is that Jack Ma? I might be getting it confused. I think Jack Ma recently said that the period for these months, 2020, is basically just about surviving. Like you have to forget all the things you wanted to do, forget your hiring plans, forget all your dreams, and if you can survive and not have to, like, file for bankruptcy, then you will already have made a quote unquote profit in 2020. And I think that's really fantastically put, because certainly we, as a business for us that relies on people being out and about and actually taking the services of our clients in car sharing and ride sharing services, like certainly our ride sharing business took a hit, and car sharing was down significantly. They're bouncing back up. We were able to have our clients run their cars for emergency personnel, which sort of kept the awareness standard even through the pandemic. And I think they're bouncing back up as cities open up around the world. But it is a tough time for hiring, and it is unfortunately for you guys a tough time for looking for jobs. We instituted a hiring freeze right as the pandemic started, and then we had to actually let go part of our workforce. So unfortunately, I don't think we're hiring right now. And I believe that would be the case for a lot of companies. So certainly it's a hard climate to graduate into. Your job search will be that much harder. You just have to use the time to brush up your skills, fine tune your resume. But I think and yes, I remember also telling my friend that don't be afraid of getting internships during this time. Given the uncertainty, I mean, even back in 2019, when there was no pandemic in the world, I was given an internship for 3 months and then converted to full time. And I think companies will be less willing to offer full-time jobs right up front to college students. So certainly get an internship 3 to 6 months and prove your worth to the company to get converted. If you don't get converted, it won't entirely be your fault. A friend of mine recently finished her internship and wasn't converted because of the pandemic. But certainly, I think getting an internship at a company will get your quote unquote foot in the door to show companies that even during this time you were able to show a company your worth with an internship, even if you didn't convert, may not necessarily be your fault. It's an interesting time to graduate into for sure. But it's also a lot of free time. You can do a lot with your time.
Right. Exactly. Depending on how you look at it, right? When things are not good, the way you look at it really changes things, right? And then, so do you think tech companies would try to ask their employees to start to work from home now more, even after the pandemic? What do you think that the post-pandemic world will look like for tech talent?
Well, I think the first question is when the post-pandemic world actually starts. And I don't know if that'll be later this year or whether it'll be next year, or whether honestly post-pandemic will be once we get a vaccine. Certainly, I don't think anyone will be required to work from the office for the rest of 2020. I know some of the big names like Twitter and Google have shifted to either part of their workforce or the entire workforce permanently working from home. I don't think that'll be the case for most companies. I still favor in-person meetings and in-person contact, and I know my company feels the same way. But at Ridecell, our offices show no signs of opening up right now. And even when they do open up, we've discussed only allowing them up for rotational access for people who want to go in. I don't believe there'll be any requirement to work from the office for the rest of 2020. And even in the future, if people are actually can stay at these levels of productivity, most people have been actually fairly productive working from home, with the occasional, intrusion of kids and kids and family in meetings. People have been pretty productive. So if companies can see the value in working from home, they might even allow it long term. But certainly I doubt you'd be working from the office for the rest of 2020.
Right. That's actually very good, very helpful. And then I think for people who are, listening to it and then who are cracking on, computer science projects, right? Coding projects. Maybe it's worthwhile to look into the distant working applications that you might be able to do, right? Because who knows, maybe a year later it'll be a very big need, right? What type of project management tools would speak to a post-pandemic world, right?
Right.
For not only tech, right, but for everybody, really.
Right.
Because people like Office, right? Because the productivity is there, right? And then the connection is
right.
there.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much. This is really, really helpful. And I don't know, Nipun, do you have any questions for Karan?
I did at the start, but you covered most of the questions. So now I'm pretty good. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Well, finally, I'll just ask for one big tip from you, Karan, to all the students who are listening. It doesn't matter they're computer science or anybody, like true students. What's your biggest tip for students?
That's interesting. This is the kind of answer that goes into like a book of quotes later, doesn't it? I would say just keep your eyes and ears open, and like don't be afraid to take in small bits of information here and there. I remember some of my friends back in school were very focused on really exactly what they wanted to do, and really took only courses to fit that understanding. And I say that's fine. Like that's a great approach, but I also really value being able to pick up things along the way that you never know are going to help you where. And they may not be instrumental in helping you somewhere, and I certainly wouldn't prioritize those over getting a standard like I wouldn't prioritize those over like to come in the way of your life or education. But if you keep your eyes and ears open, and you learn things, you pick up something here, you learn something there, you speak with someone here, you make a connection there, and especially if you build your network in ways that you don't know will help you right now, it can certainly jump up and ambush you positively in ways in your life.
I think that's a perfect tip, because if you noticed it, we just looped back to the very beginning. Remember, you said, as an adage, everything in the end works.
Yes.
In your life. So that's actually very perfect, But, anyhow, thank you so much for your time. And, again, we really appreciate you being our international alumni who is very willing to help other international students. And I think it definitely takes this community of graduating students who are successful, giving back to new students, and then the new students becoming alumni, and then going on and on and on, and then that'll make everybody successful, right? So
my pleasure, Max. I was once in these students' shoes as well, and I know exactly what they're going through.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you again. Really appreciate it, and best of luck for your work and career and everything, and let's keep in touch. All right.
Thanks a lot, Max. Definitely.
Thank you.
Do you have a few minutes after you stop the recording to chat?
Yes, I am just going to do that.